Good evening, Karen. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I started desktop sharing. Can you see the desktop okay? You're good. Welcome. Let's see, we have Daniel, Jingling, Karen, and Kang. Welcome, guys. Okay. Tonight, we're going to do a review for chapters 3 through 7 because the test opens tomorrow night and runs from tomorrow. Well, tomorrow. I don't think it's in the evening. I think it opens earlier. Let's see when it opens. Yeah, it looks like it's Friday, I guess, tonight until Sunday evening. But it's got a 2.5 hour time limit once you start. You need to finish, although I don't think it's going to take that long. It all depends. Yeah. Once again, this is worth 45 points. And then you have an optional test that's also open from Friday through Sunday, 11:55, with a 1/2 hour time limit to answer that. And you can earn up to 5 extra credit points. I highly recommend you do that. In case you miss a couple of points here, you can make it up here. Are there any questions before we start? Hi, Albert. Any questions from any of the chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 before we start? Okay, I don't see any. I'm going to review some of the I guess the more valued questions in terms of points. Good evening, Mega. And the test covers chapters 3 through 7. There's 5 true or false questions worth 1 point, 5 multiple choice questions worth 3 points each, and then 5 fill-in-the-blank questions worth 5 points each. I want to take you through because this is the first quarter I've used Canvas for this class. The last time I used this class, last time I taught CIS31 was last year, winter of 2017, and I used Catalyst then. And Canvas doesn't really have a format like Catalyst did for putting the answers in. So I'm going to show you how to do that tonight. All right? This will help on a couple of the questions. And we're talking about the fill in the blank. The true and false and multiple choice will be easy. It's just how do I get the format that I'm looking for the answers. And that's what I want to share with you. Okay, just a quick review on deadlocks. Chapter 7 we did on Tuesday. There are 4 conditions of deadlocks. All 4 have to be there or you don't have a deadlock. Mutual exclusion, meaning a resource cannot be shared by another process. No preemption. Once a process has a resource, it can't arbitrarily be removed. Hold and wait. Hold on to a resource while waiting for some other resource. And there's a circular list. A is holding what B needs, who's holding what C needs, who's holding what A needs. It's this circular concept. Then we went through the concept of prevention. Well, how do you prevent it? So you eliminate one of the conditions. This doesn't work. It's been tried back in the 80s, mainly really in the 70s for the older operating systems. And they just can't really eliminate, you can't prevent it. Avoidance. You get the concept of safe versus unsafe state. We need to know the maximum resource usages. So of every resource, we need to know in advance what's the maximum number of that type of resource that the process will need. And that's kind of a difficult item to really know because programs are so dynamic. And that's why this attempt really doesn't work. The OS never moves allocated resources from safe to unsafe. That's the rule of this avoidance. You always want to stay in the safe state. If it is in an unsafe state, does that mean we have a deadlock? You guys remember that from Tuesday? Okay, what's the answer to this question? If it is in an unsafe state, does that mean we have a deadlock? What's the answer? Not always is the correct answer. Correct. Very good, Linn. Then finally, we can't prevent. Avoidance is a little tougher. Just let it happen and do detection. Example is graph reduction. If we discover a deadlock, the OS will typically kill one or more of the offending processes until the deadlock is gone. How often or when should the deadlock program run? They either use a time quantum, 5 seconds or 10 seconds, or if processes are in a wait state for a long period of time, 5 or 10 seconds, run the deadlock detector. And that's what we talked about on Tuesday. So let's look at the deadlock graph reduction algorithm. You're going to see a problem like this on the test. I'll have a graph like this, and I'll want you to be able to figure out whether this is deadlocked or not. Do you recall that from Tuesday? Okay. The rule was, if a process has all of its resource, reduce it. In other words, get rid of the lines associated with the resource. If a process, let me make this a little bit bigger. My eyes aren't that good. If a process needs a resource and it's available, grant that access. And then go back and do number 1 again. And what we said was, we give 1 to P3. So R1, where's R1? No. Give 1 R4 to P3. P3 is requesting 1, so we give it, and it's not requesting anything else. Therefore, at some point it's going to finish, so we can reduce it. And it frees up this resource, and it frees up that resource. And once again, the order doesn't matter of what we pick. So what we did was we said, okay, give an R1 to P1. So P3 freed it up. We give an R1 to P1. It doesn't need anything else, so it'll complete, and we mark it off the chart. Now remember, we're doing all this as what-ifs, okay? We're not really releasing these resources. We're just checking what-if to see if there is a deadlock. So it's going to free up this resource and this resource, okay? It looks like P4 wants one of those, so we could give it to P4, and that'll free up this one and these two that we gave up. This one's already free, and then P2 can grab this guy, and P5 could grab one of those because we gave up P1. So this isn't deadlock. So the idea is when you're done with this reduction, you don't have any of the arrows. They're all gone. If you have any arrows left, you've got a deadlock. Any questions on that? Yes, King. That's exactly what would happen. You'd probably end up something, I don't know how to draw it. Let me insert a new slide. I hate when I put these things on. I just like these, so I always start it with an empty screen, and then let's insert a couple of shapes here. Circles, why not? And then I'll make I hate the default too. I usually fix these things later. Okay, so now we've got two resource types. These are two resource types. And let's get small little resources. And I'm not going to worry about changing the innards of these guys. So something like this, and then you would have, let's go one more, a couple of processes. Usually it's, two or more processes. Something like that. And then you would finally have your arrows. Right? This guy is owned by that guy. This guy. Copy. Paste. And this one is owned by that guy. And let's create some other. Oh, I got it. This case. Okay. And this one We want one. We want another. Typical. Okay. And this guy. That's one of these. Something like that. Yeah, the arrow facing this is it wants one. The arrow to the process means it has that resource. It owns that resource. And this one, I need a couple more. With this guy. This guy owns that one. And I think I need one more. See the head of that. And this one owned by this guy. So I've got this resource type owned by this guy, and this resource type owned by this guy. It wants another one of these. This guy wants another one of these. They're not going to release what they've got. Therefore, I'm stuck. That's a deadlock. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay. Now I'm going back to our notes. And that pretty much, except for the other question in this chapter, there were quite a few things that came out of this chapter. So let's look at that. One was this idea of I don't see it in my samples. It was the question about safe and unsafe states. I don't see that. I thought I had all the examples out here, but I guess I don't. Sample safe or unsafe. This one. Okay, you're going to have one of these. Now, this is going to be a multiple choice, so it's worth 3 points. When we did this on Tuesday, what we said was E is in an unsafe state because I don't have any resources enough available for any one of these to reach its maximum need. And you can't predict what's happening to this. Process 1 might be deallocating all of the, maybe it had its 12, but it's deallocating them. We don't know that. We don't know if it wants the 4 more back. So we are in an unsafe state right here. And we don't know if it's deadlocked, but it certainly is unsafe. We wouldn't allow this to happen. All of these examples are at safe state, meaning that if I have an available resource, I can give it to only, in this case, I could only give it to process 1 and be safe, because then it would free up the 2. The 2 could go in here, and that would be safe. And then I would get 6 back, etc. That's how you play this game. The one where I have nothing available, I have 4 allocated and 4 maximum, so I know that this is going to give the 4 back. I would then give it either to process 2 or process 3, those 4. But once I gave one of them, let's say process 3 wanted one, right? And I gave one of the 4 here to this process, I could not, and this one requests one, I wouldn't give it to it because I would then be in an unsafe state. Okay, how's that for everybody? Do you understand that? Anybody unclear? Because if someone's unclear, chances are 10 people are unclear. So I want to make sure it's clear. All right, the only thing that would change on this problem would be the numbers. Okay? Okay, when we talked about Chapter 5, we talked about maintaining asynchronous processes and shared data. And we talked about a monitor as being an example of a way of maintaining shared data. In other words, the concept of the monitor is that processes request any kind of resource. They come through an entry point. If we can allocate them that resource, we do so. If we cannot allocate them the resource, we stick them at the end of awaiting that resource in a queue. And then eventually, in this example, E2 releases the resource. So what you have to do on the test is make sure you read this carefully, because I made subtle changes to this on the test. So please read that carefully. The setup is pretty much the same. Okay. And what you would do would be, out of the question, what I would do on the test is I would copy this and paste it into my answer and then just answer it. I don't have all these underlines on the test. Okay, I just got the numbers for you. So it makes it easier. You just have to type after it. So the question is, what do you type? Let's do the first one together. Process A just entered through C1. So what does that mean if it entered through C1? First thing you have to figure out is how many are available. Sure. Okay, let's go through it so that makes some sense to you. The way the monitor works is it requests a printer through E1 and it releases the printer through E2. If there's no printer available, it sticks it at the end of C1. So because D is sitting there, we know it had to have been 0. But since A came through C1, we know it had to be 1. So the number of printers at the time A came through was 1. So what would happen would be A enters through C1, receives the printer, this is available, and we decrement the number of printers back to 0, and it leaves. Those were the statements that we put here. Let me open up the completed one. That'd probably be better to look at. I thought that was the completed one. Okay. So, A enters through C1, receives the printer, decrements, and that leaves 0, and leaves. These are the things I'm looking for when you write it. Then what happens? Well, it services E2 before E1, therefore C will enter through E2, release a printer, so it's incremented, and it signals C1. That's what happens up here through E2. It says here, it deallocates one of the printers when a process enters through E2. It increments, it ends by signaling C1. So it's signaled. So if it's signaled, then D is going to come in, enters through C1, receives the printer, decrements, we're back at 0, and it leaves. Okay, so now we've taken care of A, C, and D. B is sitting there wanting a printer. So B enters through E1, requests one, none available, we place it on C1 at the end of C1. So at the end of this first set, what it would look like would be all of these processes would be gone except B would sit here. Is that clear? Any questions? I don't see any. Okay, so the next one is, suppose we reset the situation. Process A entered through E1. For some reason, C wasn't there when we looked up the queue. All right, guys? C wasn't there when we looked on the queue, and there's A, and then C showed up right then. That's what would explain this. How many printers are available? 0. Very good. So A enters 3-1, requests a printer, none available, placed after D. So A would be after D. Then what do? We go E2. E2. C enters through E2, releases, increment. Now we have 1, signals C1. Next event to occur is D enters through C1, receives the printer, we decrement it, and it leaves. And finally, B enters through E1, requests none available, and placed on C1 after A. So what would happen would be you would see nothing here, but A would be first, and then B would be second on this queue. Any questions on that one? Okay. The last one I did with you guys also, but it's a little different when A enters through E2. First of all, how many printers are available before A entered through E2? 0. Right. Good. So when it went through, A enters through E2, releases a printer, we increment the number to 1, and we signal C1, which means D is going to come in next. And exactly do this. D enters through C1, receives the printer, we decrement, and it leaves. Okay? Then we got C coming in next. So C, the third action would be C enters through E2, releases a printer, we increment the number back to 1, and signal C1. Well, there's nothing to be signaled. I mean, there's nothing there. So we go to the next event. So we've handled all these. B comes in, requests the printer, gets it, receives the printer because there's 1 available. C gave it. 1 available. Now it's back to 0. And there's nothing in the queue anymore in this example. Is that clear? You guys are okay. Any questions? Okay. I said this review shouldn't take too long tonight. All right. the monitor questions. Now we're stepping back to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 talked about processes. So you really need to understand how the state transition works. And the one thing we talked about, I guess it was last Tuesday, was there's really not a state so much as it is an event right here. And I talked about the held. When a process is executing, it's running. A timer interrupt hits it. It goes through all of that stuff. But then when the dispatcher wants to return, wants to select a process, it may get it from this held state out here. Okay? And that would not be a context switch. If, however, it decided that the guy that was running doesn't get the CPU back, then the state would change from held back to ready, and then another process would be entered, and that would be a context switch. So there is this kind of concept of a held state. I didn't draw it. You don't have to replicate it on the test, but just be aware of it. Any questions about how a process goes through these states? Okay. And then when we talked about threads, threads are executable units. And the threads have their own thread control block, and you can have many threads. Do you remember what threads share of the process? The process's memory, the code, right? The code. What else? Open files. Yeah, the heap. Yeah. The memory heap. Then the thread itself has its own little stack. That's why I don't like to use the word stack. It has its own little stack, and it keeps track of the registers, right? The thread does. And it can have its own stack of memory. Okay. Scheduling threads is really done by the program rather than the operating system. And the threading models that we talked about were, if I have a user thread, I could have one kernel thread per user thread. That's a one-to-one. I could have one to many, right? I could have one kernel thread to many user threads. Or I could have a decision concept where I have many threads being decided at one time, at any particular time, being serviced by multiple threads. Now, those were the different threading models we talked about. Okay, so there's the process stuff. I'm going to delete this. Then I think in chapter 5 we were talking about maybe in chapter 3 scheduling the CPU. You recall when we scheduled the CPU, we had different scheduled mechanisms. for scheduling the CPU. Remember that? First come, first serve. First come, first serve. Non-preemptive. Remember that? Now this is that once the CPU is given to a process, you cannot preempt it. The operating system cannot preempt it. It either ends or requests service. Okay. Shortest job first. You have to pick the process that has the smallest executable length, I guess. Is the best way to say it. It's the smallest executable length. You pick that, but to make this work, you got to know the execution length of every process. This is almost near impossible to do, but it's very effective, as you saw. Okay. And you have to wait. I mean, there's a kind of a in the wait queue, the ready queue. You have to figure out, not the wait queue, but the ready queue. You have to kind of hold the queue until you get a few processes to determine the smallest one. So there's a kind of a lag there. Priority, right? You assign a priority. So either the user or operating system could do that, or both. And what about this concept? What's some of the issues here? Guys, remember? That's it. Starvation. So to get around this, the OS would what? Aging. Very good. Okay, now one of the others is round robin. In this, you're going to have a time quantum concept and allow processes to run for a specific time, then time them out. And that kind of led us to a more sophisticated scheduling concept called multi-level feedback queues. Multi-level feedback queues. And I thought I had one. Yeah, I do have one, but I wanted to share something else with you at this point. So what I did on Canvas was I put a sample test question for us to go over and show you how to work it. So we're going to do this together. So you would see this type of question on the test. This is what you have to do to make it work. Once again, this is because of the way Canvas is organized. So I'm going to hit preview. And you guys can do this too. Okay, it's the same question I gave you guys as the sample. So what you need to do is you need to copy and paste this. So you have to copy it just like this. So I'm going to do Control-C, and I'm going to paste it. Control-V. But it throws it in this crappy format. So the steps are, and let me put this in the notes so that you know. Okay. I'll do it at the end. So multi why they're so good. Okay, we'll answer that in a minute. Okay, to answer this 5. Copy and paste. According to instructions. After you paste, you're going to do Control-A to select everything. Select all. So I'm going to take you through those steps. So I'm going to be in here, Control-A, and I'm going to scroll over, and I'm going to change paragraph to pre-formatted. Now it's looking a little better. So that's the first step. Put that in there. All right, we did select all. Then scroll to find the paragraph selector. Choose just the down arrow. Choose Okay, so now it's looking a little better. Then the next step is to choose 10 instead of 12. Now, let's see what we got. Still not great, but at least you can answer the question. What if we could choose a smaller one? Yeah, maybe 8-point would be better. Yeah, because then you see it all. So choose 8 points. So let me say that. Then choose font size of 8 points. Okay, scroll the font down, pre-formatted. Then choose font size. Okay. So now the other thing is, I was thinking when we were doing this, now, you see this up here? It's kind of like these are the instructions and the information, and yet you're going to have to keep scrolling down to here. So another suggestion I have is to copy the instructions. So I'm going to do Control-C to copy the instructions. And then I'm going to open up Notepad. So I'm going to open up Notepad and paste it. Okay, and then make it really small. Like this. Make it really small. So I've got that information, right, and I can always get back to it and look at it while I'm right here. So I'm answering the question here, filling in the answers, and I can always go here, and it's faster. So that would be my next suggestion. So let me go to this guy, choose instruction. Copy to the okay, so there's another one. This would have been a lot easier if Canvas was set up as the way Catalyst was, to pre-format the answers for you. And I apologize, but this is the best I could do to make it easy. I tried thinking of a different way of formatting this for you for the answer, but I couldn't come up with it. All right. There is an alternate, so maybe I should tell you the alternate. Well, let's finish this up. If I'm going to use this, okay, I want to do each unit. I want to show the processes where they are on the queue. So at level 1 is higher priority than level 2, has higher priority than level 3. This means it's executing. This means it's in the multi-level feedback queue. And it's just to show us that there's something executing. So each quantum level is, level 1 is 2 units, level 2 is 3 units, level 3 is 4 units. No units are to be registered during the process transition, so we're not including the operating system in any of this stuff. Each of the units required, A needs 4 units, B needs 2, C needs 1, D needs 7. A just entered the running state. Process E will enter at level 1 7 units needing 1. So once again, what I would do here as a reminder is E is coming in here. Well, wait a minute. This is 9. So I gotta go to right there. It says after 7 units. After 7 units, so it's coming in at 8. So it's coming in right here. Here's where I need E enters. Just to remind myself that E is coming in and preempting whatever's running. And this is the key thing to keep track of, is how many each one really needs. Okay, so I'm not even copy that, so I don't have to go back and forth and paste it. So I can see it. Now I know. I can remember 2, 3, and 4. So I've got it. Now to fill it out. A needs 4. He's only going to get 2 at level 1. So this thing is going to look exactly like this at the second level. Now I'm in insert mode. So if I click here, I can hit the insert key on the keyboard and it's honored by this system. So I don't have to do backspaces, and I can make it look just like that. by using the overwrite key. That makes it a lot easier. Or if you want to use insert and backspace, you can, but it just makes it a little nicer. Okay, A's had its 2 units. A's had its 2 units. What happens to A? You guys remember? It goes to level 2 at the end. And then who's going to run? You always want to show a process executing. Which process is going to be executing? D. Correct. Okay. Do I need to go any further on this for anybody? Okay. We'll go a little further. Sure. So it's going to look like this. D is going to be here. D also is here, but now A is behind it, and C is still there. So that's what that one looks like. Now, D needs 7 units, so it's going to be a while. So that was Unit 3. Unit 4 looks exactly like Unit 3. Nothing's changed, so it looks exactly like that. But D got its units. It's 2 quantum. D got its 2 quantums at level 2. Excuse me, level 1. So it would get preempted, and then what would be executing next? Right. So I'll put D here, even though you know that there's really only one CPU, but I just wanted to show you to illustrate it. So this would be A, and this would be D, and this is still C. That's what it should look like for Unit 5. And B needs 2 units. Okay, so what would Unit, 6, what would it look like? Anybody? How did I go from 4 to 5? D got its 2 units and would be timed out. Because it only gets 2 units at level 1. And it got its 2. They're right here. There's 1 unit, and there's the other. Each one of these is 1 unit. It's like a snapshot in time. This is the first time unit, next time unit. Does that make sense? Tell me if you're still not seeing it. G does need 7 total, but it's not going to get 7 because of the multi-level feedback queue concept. It means that it only going to get what is available at each level. That's right, Steve. That's correct. Okay. Is that... Okay. It's in level 1. It's in level 1 execution. It's executing on the CPU. It got one of the units at this level 1, and it got the second unit here. So there's the other unit. So it got 2 units. Just like A. Same thing when we did A. A got 2 units. It needed 4. A needs 4 units. Okay, I'm going to continue. No. Level 1, the maximum number of units is 2. Level 2 is 3 units. Level 3 is 4 units. That's how we set up the quantum at each level. So at level 0, the most any process can get is 2 units. A got 2, B got 2, and now it's B's turn. And whenever a process times out at a level, it goes to the next lower level. That's the rule of multi-level feedback queues. Okay, B only needed 2 units. So it got 1 unit here. What would this unit look like? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly correct, Linn. Exactly correct. So let's make that happen. If I hit the right key. Look just like that. Now B is done, because it only needed 2. So B is done. Even though at level 3, what's the quantum at level 3? Excuse me. What's the quantum at level 2? It's 3 units, correct. But it only needed 2. All right. So what would, since B is gone, what would be executing next? Right, A. So it would look like this. Okay, now something's happening here at B. B's coming in, and it's going to preempt this. So we're going to push A to the beginning. So A is going to be here. But A also, I'm going to actually do it this way. A actually needs 2 more units. Needs 2 more units. Let me just put a dash. And the reason for that is we gave it 1, but at this level it should get 3 units. So it should be A with 2 left. Okay, and then D would be here, and C would be here, and E preempted it would be there. And that's what this would look like. Well, no, Megan, I keep track of the units used, you know, mentally, how many units. Right, it would only get 3 when we put it in. That's correct. And we'll see that. Okay, what happens next? What happens next in this scenario? E only needed 1 unit. So when we start up this, it'll look like this. Okay, here's our next unit. So E's gone. We're going to put A back in here, but we're only going to give it 2 units. D is here. D is here. And C is here. Instead of giving it 3, we're only going to give it 2 at this level. Okay, now did everybody follow that? Anybody confused by that? Well, the purpose of, well, I'll go through the purpose after this. All right, so we have to add up how many units we've given everything. A needed 4 units. It got 1 here, it got 1 there, that's 2. It got 1 there, that's 3. And finally, it got 1 there, that's 4. It's done here. So it's, even though we were giving it 2, it only needed 1 more of the total of 4. Okay, step 4 to 5. What's the quantum level at level 1? 2. Okay. D got 1 of the 2 here at number 3, and it got the second one at number 4. So it times out. It's not in L1 twice. It's executing. It's in the execution queue. There's only 1 CPU. Maybe I displayed it incorrectly for you, but there's only 1 execution queue. See, there's only 1. I'm just showing it that it came from that level. But there's only 1 CPU. Does that help? It's not on level 1 twice. It's scheduled by the dispatcher for 2 units, and it's placed on the CPU. It got 1, it got 2. Boy, it's hard to describe what this diagram is representing. Think about it this way. This whole thing is 1 CPU. If I put the D here, does it really matter? Did I put the D here, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. I just put the D in to show us that this guy is executing. And it came from level 1. Not that it's still at level 1. It came from level 1, getting 2 units. When the 2 are up, it gets demoted and placed at the next lower level. That's the way multi-level feedback cues work. Let's go back to this. Maybe this would be helpful. The rules are lower level cues have larger size quantities. That's the first rule. Second rule is higher level cues preempt lower ones. So if I get a process coming in at a higher level, it'll preempt whatever's executing on the processor and run that process. When it times out at a higher level, that's the third rule. When a process times out at a level, it moves to the next lower level. First come, first served. First come, first served. It goes at the end of the chain of that level. And this is really what makes up multi-level feedback queue. Why does this work? Is because it tries to get processes, higher priority to processes that need very little CPU, request service, and are gone. And then those that need a lot of CPU start to move down the queue, and they get timed out longer. It's because they get a longer size quantum. They get a larger size quantum. Therefore, they're going to run for a longer period of time. So it's showing processes are starting to be CPU bound because they need the CPU. So you give it more CPU. D needs 7 CPU units. Right here, needs 7. So it got 2, and now it's being pushed down to the next lower level, but it's going to get 3 when it goes into the CPU. It's going to get 3 units instead of 2. And then if it still needs the CPU, it'll go to level 3 and get 4 units. So it's a way of really smartly scheduling and knowing I have I/O-bound processes. They get high priority because they're going to get in and request a record and get the heck out, versus compute-type processes which are going to take more CPU. Is that clear? And all I'm doing here is demonstrating how it works, you know, with a real live example. Okay, so now I've got, I mean, is this still unclear between 4 and 5? I think the diagram is confusing you here, this part of it. Think of this as just one CPU, and B is executing it. Okay? It doesn't matter where it came from. What matters is the time quantum that we gave it, the time slice. If it comes from level 2, we're going to give it a 3 time quantum. If it comes from level 1, we're going to give it a 2 time quantum. If it comes from level 3, we're going to give it a 4 time quantum. Is that making sense, Megan? Maybe somebody else could describe it also. Okay, step 3 just shows that B came from level 2 and is actually at step 4. Each of these numbers is a CPU unit. So this is CPU unit 3. This is CPU unit 4. Kang, I'm not sure when that's going to happen. They've been running very late, so it could be tomorrow evening. I keep checking. It's being posted. Okay. Let's finish this up. So I've got A's got its 4 units. This is the 4th unit, 4th CPU unit right here at 9. It got its 4th unit. So what's going to appear next is D. So D is going to be here, and C is going to be here. And now we have to ask how many units has D had already. All right, I've got to count. D had 1 there, 1 there, 1 there, and at this level it gets 3. So it's going to look, this unit's going to look just like the previous unit. It's going to look like this. Okay, and then since that was unit 4 of its 7 right here. Unit 4 of its 7. We're going to give it 1 more because the quantum at this level is 3 units, and there's the 3 units. So we time it out, and now we're going to be running C, and D will look like that, and C only needed 1 unit, therefore D is going to come in at this level, and at this level it's going to be 4. The quantum's going to be 4. Okay, but I don't know, I got to recount them. So we've got 1, 2 D's, 1, 2 D's, 3, 4, 5 D's, so it needs 2 more. So there's 1 of the 2, there's the other of the 2, so it's out, and this guy doesn't have anything. It looks just like this. That's how this would look, and that's when you would submit the quiz when you were done. This problem is going to take you maybe, depending on how you understand it, it could take you a little bit of time. Let me show you the other way you could do this. Okay, there's different mechanisms. Here's another mechanism, another way. All right, so I'm going to move this here. Another way is to come up to the problem. Right? You just copy the whole problem and stick it in Notepad. Stick the whole problem in Notepad and copy. The problem with sticking it in Notepad is this is rich text format, and it does weird stuff. And you'll see it when I paste it. Well, that's actually isn't too bad. So, yeah, I would do it this way. That way you can see the whole thing. Do it in Notepad. Then when you're done, copy and paste. So that's another way to do it. Copy and paste. The thing I want you to do when you copy and paste it, though, is to reformat it the way I asked so I can see it. Otherwise, it's going to look really bad. Okay, so I gave you 2 different ways to do this problem. I want to move on. And you can practice that. Okay, what else did we talk about? we talked about on chapter 5, asynchronous. We talked about the monitor. Do you remember on chapter 5 the asynchronous stuff? So let's look at that. Mutual exclusion. Why do we need it? When accessing shared data, only one process at a time. And that means you're going to use a concept called critical sections. So only in a critical section, your mutual exclusion is you're saying only one process can be in that critical section accessing the shared data, because you're going to make a change to the queue. For instance, just something simple, like you see these multi-level feedback queues. The dispatcher is going to be making changes when it schedules, right? When it schedules a process. When it schedules a process, the dispatcher is going to be saying the state is changing from ready to execute. Well, what would happen in the middle of that? An interrupt would occur, and if no process is coming back in, right, and we need to add it to this queue right here, well, the dispatcher is trying to take A off the queue to put it in the ready list, and the timeout handler or the service request handler or some other handler is trying to add the process back into the ready state, the I/O completion handler. So you're getting all these different processes trying to update this shared data, and you need a mechanism to protect it. That's what Chapter 5 was about. Monitors was one example of that. Monitor was an example of a simple way. But what did we use? Do you remember there were two machine instructions that made this feasible? You remember this? Two machine instructions that would allow walking of code? Well, I have questions on the test regarding this. Did anybody name the two instructions? I don't know what that is, Megan. Okay. Test and set, do you remember that? It doesn't. You're close, Kenny. Test meaning something like this. Let's say I have a variable called myLock, Boolean, and I'll set it to false. Okay. Do while myLock is true. And just spin waiting for my lock to be false. It's a loop. So while my lock is true. Well, the first time through, what does, oh, I need to say test and set. I didn't say test and set. Test and set my lock. You gotta have a function. So while it's true, we're going to loop here. We're going to loop right here. And as soon as it's false, we drop into the critical section. It is. It is. I'm just illustrating how you would use test and set. That's correct, Nathan. It's a machine instruction, but it would be written like this. This is how you would write a critical section code. Okay, and then when you're done to release the lock, you set my lock to false. Okay. Now, this code is shared by multiple processes. No, that's not quite correct. You would check the lock and acquire the lock before you go into the critical section. Because here's what test and set does. So let's make sure. Test reads a value from memory, then immediately sets it to true. Let's say reads a Boolean value. Reads a Boolean value from memory, or returns a Boolean value. That's even better. Returns a Boolean value from memory. So it reads the contents of whatever that is, returns it, then immediately sets it to true. So what happens here is if it's false, the test and set my lock would return false and immediately set it to true, all in one instruction. So no one else, no other process could squeeze in and check the lock and it also being false at the same time. It can't happen. So in this case, in this do while, once it's true, okay, let's say process A, let's do it this way. Do it this way, maybe it'd be clearer. Process A goes through first. So what's going to happen is A does the test and set. It's false, so it's in the critical section. Okay, so let's stop it in the critical section. Stop it in the critical section. Now let's start up process B. Spins on the lock because it's true. So test and set would return true because the Boolean is now true because A hit it first. Now it's true and it stays in the loop, comes back, checks test and set again. Is it still true? Yeah, still true. So it reads it. Even though it reads it and it's true, it will still set it to true. So it's returning true, returning true, returning true, returning true. So it spins on the lock until process A does the my lock equal false. Okay, so maybe now we start up A again. So let's do A stuff, and then it sets my lock false. All right. Now we come back again to B. B sees that it's now false. That spins until A, process A turns it to false. Now, the next time through the loop, here, it's going to be false because we set it false. Process A set it false here. It's going to read and return false and immediately set it to true so that no other process can go into this critical section. Now, it's in the critical section. That's how these work. Questions? Is this clear, Mega? Good. Yeah, you got to see it in code. The only way to really see how these instructions work is to see them in code as to why they work. Okay. That's test and set. The other instruction is called the swap instruction. And it swaps two values from memory. So it's going to take a value, save it temporarily, take the other value, store that in that one, and then place the one in there that was saved temporarily. To me, this is a little more confusing in instruction. That's why I tend to use the test and set as an example on the test. So you're going to see this on the test. Okay, what's the other mechanism that we talked about for synchronizing? This is a way of synchronizing asynchronous events. Right? They all happen at different times. What form of question would test and set be? Now you'll have to wait and see. What's another mechanism for synchronizing? Yeah, but what's it? Yes, you're right. You got it. Would be semaphores. You got it. And I went through that one time. I can't remember when I did that with you guys. $5 days ago? 2 days ago? I can't remember when we did that. If I write code like this, process A, process B, process C, and A, they all processes are sharing this data. X, Y, Z. Okay? So I wanted to illustrate something. If I have something that x equals, in the code, x equals y plus c, and this one says y equals z minus x, and this one says z equals x times y, right? 3 different lines of code. And we don't know when these are going to execute. So if I give you values like x equal 5, y equal 10, and z equal, I don't know, 2. After these run, what are the values of x, y, and z? What do you guys think? Let me tell you the issue. Yes, that's what I was going to allude to. But I did want to bring it up because this concept is on the test. And that's the race condition. Remember we talked about that? We're not blocking these processes. There's no critical section here. There's no critical section here at all. Okay. Well, I think I covered everything that was on the test with you guys. I'm going to save this and repost it for you guys. Do you have any questions? Do you have anything you wanted to talk about? We have about, I don't know, 25 minutes left. What last question? Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, the last one on the notes here? This one? No. No, there's no order of execution. Sure. This one here, right? Mega. Okay, you are confused. Let me do this. Let me do this. Oh, I've got it right here. Do it this way. Okay, A came from 1, and there's only one CPU. So its level, its quantum is 2 units. It would also look the same way. Okay, so the next one is A's got its 2 units. Is this better to see? A came from level 1. It got 1 unit, it got 2 units. Because each unit is a unit. This is unit number 1. This is unit number 2. Those are the 2 units. This is unit number 3. Now you see each one of these represents what it looks like at that unit. I know it's a tough way of representing this problem. Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. If they came from level 2, they would have 3 units, and so they would be there 3 times. Right. They'd be here, here, and here. Unless they got preempted. Good. Very good. Yeah, I know. This, you know, when I think of problems, sometimes my mind goes a little strange, but if you understand how this works, you really understand multi-level feedback. Good. Excellent. All right. Did we do the question of the CC confer question? Not yet. Well, don't you think we should? Yeah, I think we should too. Oh, very good. You guys are going to do great on the test. Okay, what is the name of the mechanism Art showed to determine if a system has a deadlock? What is the name? It's not this name, but it's close. That's correct, Kane. It's graph reduction. That's the answer. I'm not going to check it because I know it's going to be okay. All right. Other questions? The question's law. 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 Well, that's strange. Let me go to it. Oh, okay. That's good. I was worried for a second. I wanted to see when this test's open. It opens tonight at 12. Okay? So it'll be open tonight. Matter of fact, it's probably open right now. Oh no, I'm sorry. It's only 9, not 12. Okay, other questions. You guys are going to do fine on the test. We covered the monitor, the safe, unsafe states, deadlock, graph reduction. I think we're in pretty good stead. We went over multi-level feedback cues, and it's clear now. Am I going to ask, hang on a second, Mig, I'm reading this. Are you going to ask about the problem where there's a cue, exec, and clock? Oh, is this the problem that's on the homework? I don't know. Where did that come from? Gender security. Huh. Oh, this was just an example. No, this is the same thing I just talked about, only this uses a different mechanism. So no, I'm not going to do that. What this was about was illustrating what you might have in your program. You know, your extra credit program, if you guys decide to do that. That's, I think, what that was about. So it's a good question, but no, I don't have anything like that. Any other questions? Great question. No, if I have something that's complex like that, I'll usually illustrate it with you guys. There's only one thing I'm not really, I talked about it, but I didn't really answer Hang's question, I think it was, about the form of the form that the testing set would take. And I wanted to surprise you guys with that. Other than that, I've covered everything that was on the test. Steve, it's just the opposite. When I think of CPU unit, I think of machine cycle. Machine cycle would be, one instruction being executed. So the quantum would be much more CPU units. The only reason I picked CPU unit was to make it easy to do. And illustrate. That's why. Does that make sense, Steve? Let's do it this way. 10 nanoseconds. That's what, 10 1/billionths of a second. Something like that, right? So in 10 nanoseconds, I could execute I don't know, thousands of instructions or something, and those are CPU units. So it'd be 1,000 of them. This could be my quantum. So the quantum could be 10 nanoseconds of time. And how many instructions or CPU units inside that is the terminology. Did that clear it up? It doesn't make sense when at least to my terminology, that you have multiple CPU units in the span of a single CPU unit. That's not the way it works. You have a quantum, which is a period of time, and how many instructions can happen in that period of time is based on the instruction set, the processor, which instructions are being executed, whether they're 2-byte instructions, 4-byte instructions, 6-byte instructions. Whether you have to compare memory, that instruction could take a lot longer. So, I'm just saying, as an average, maybe 1,000 CPU units. And a CPU unit is a fetch execute. That's a cycle. Maybe I should have said CPU cycle here than units. Okay? Is that clear for you? Good. Good. Yeah, I just used in my example, I just wanted to pick something that would make sense on the example that I was trying to show you guys. And so it seemed easy for our illustration, to show one unit. What does the queue look like in one unit? What does it look like the next unit? What does it look like the next unit? Okay, any other questions? Well, are you going to... Well, Tommy philosophy. I don't recall any questions regarding that. If you caught everything I said tonight, you should be very fine. All right, guys, I wish you well on your test. I will grade them by Monday because I don't know when you're going to do them. I always like to grade them all at one time. So I'll probably grade them Monday. Have a great weekend. When you start, don't wait until Sunday at 11 o'clock to do the test. You're going to time out. Thank you all. You guys did great. You had great questions. Have a great evening. Thank you. Thank you all.